Hi there, my name is Andrea, and this is High Literature, a program where I introduce books and comics and stories and art to you, the viewer. I was traveling over the weekend, and whenever I go to different states, different cities, what have you, I like to check out the local bookstores, local comic book stores, and see what I can find. This trip, I went to a comic book store, and they had a lot of stuff that I would have loved to have taken home, but you can't get everything, and I had to make my choices. You guys, I didn't even know this was a thing. I did not know that Michael Zulli did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. He not he wrote and illustrated them, did the cover art. Michael Zulli and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I couldn't believe it. I'm flipping through these back issue boxes, and I come across these, and my jaw just, I mean, you should have seen, I wish there was a recording of my face. I couldn't believe it. And, you're flipping through boxes, right? And you see one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And I'm like, how many, how far are we going to keep going? And it was just these three. And I come to find out later that there were only these three, so I got them all. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. I just found this in my bag, saw the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 35 millimeter. I don't know what that means. I know it means it was more expensive. But yeah, I just saw this in theater. Gosh, it's already been over a month. How is that possible? Man, time goes by too fast. Yeah, I love the Turtles. They are so great. I cried and cried and cried watching the movie. It's such a great movie. And these are just wonderful. It stinks because, the art is gorgeous. First page. Bam. Look at that. How cool is that? And you can just tell, I can only imagine what got lost in the printing because, think about what the originals looked like. Speaking of originals, let me show you something. What a coincidence. So, look at this. See this? First off, that's badass. Second, the original piece of this is up for auction. It's on Heritage Auction right now. Heritage Art, whatever. It's up for auction. Last I checked, it was earlier this morning, so I'm sure the figure's different now, but it was at $300 this morning. It was just funny to me that I find this Saturday, and then today it was like an Instagram post or something talking about pieces that were up, original art that was up for auction. I'm like, oh, what is it? I'm just curious. And I'm like, wait a minute, that Michael Zulli piece looks familiar. And it was this. And it's just, how crazy is that? The story, so there's 3 issues, and I'm so curious. So Michael Zulli did the series between 90 and 91. And there's, I guess, a trade paperback you can get where all 3 of them are collected, including other stories. Don't know what they are. And I'm wondering if that, because when I first got these, I was thinking I was missing some because this says book 31. And then it jumps to book 35. And I'm like, oh no, I have more to find. And then book 36. So I don't know what that jump is about. I did a little digging on the internet, not a lot, and I don't have an answer. But it is just these 3 as far as the Michael Zulli TMNT art goes. And I got them all. I'm so happy. And I don't know what the number jump is all about, but I wanted to read the intro. Cowabunga and the Zen of turtle maintenance. That's funny. Oh. Come on. Yes. All right. Okay. You hold in your hands the second installment of Michael Zulli's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trilogy. No, these aren't the turtles you are all used to. Where Pete and Kevin's famous quartet are a fun-loving, kick-ass, highly trained gang with Splinter, their surrogate father, mother, and scoutmaster, Zulli's version of the TMNT are truly dark and reptilian. Skilled, monstrous warriors dedicated to the samurai ethic and their sensei, Splinter, mentor and spiritual father. Pete, Kevin, and the Mirage artists revel in the humor inherent in the concept. A giddy blend of fantasy, heroics, and villainy crazy quilting, with the urban and rural environments, splashy but rarely explicit, thank God, violence, and a raucous penchant for slang, party, and goofy melodramatics. Zulli, on the other hand, has top-loaded his humorless turtles with a literal translation of what is the only implicit in the original TMNT. Eastern beliefs and philosophy, the obsession of the discipline, ominous portents and omens, the jarring violence, and its terrible consequences. Perhaps you've found Michael's unique approach exhilarating and intoxicating. Perhaps you consider it too downbeat, an aberration. These turtles aren't the turtles you've come to know and love, however compelling Michael's art may indeed be. And not a single cowabunga. I mean, who's in charge here? I put it to you that Zulli's turtles are not just an ugly aberration, nor are they simply an interesting experiment. Zulli's unique take on the turtles mutates the mutants in a way that brings them back to their roots. Peter and Kevin did not create the turtles in a complete void. Original they are in that they touch a surprisingly deep nerve in the comic reading audience, and now the American pop culture at large is self-evident. But the turtles indeed came from somewhere other than just Eastman and Laird's brain pans and pen tips, and Michael Herron reminds us of those roots with clarity, immediacy, and vision. Dig it. Chinese history goes back to 2500 BC, rich in mythology, legends, and lore, and most relevant here, the martial arts. Japan, with its own traditions, including the samurai swordsman and karate, dates back to 108 BC, when it was known only as Wo, with its separate factions unifying into a single nation by 450 AD. And lo, the Orient did spawn its own film industry in the early 1900s, fueled by its fantasies and its respective heritages, and yea, verily did it give birth to the martial arts and samurai movies, with Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai, 1952, and Yojimbo, 1961, popularizing the Japanese samurai in America, and with China's Five Fingers of Death, 1971, and Bruce Lee doing the same for the kung fu and martial arts, the bedrock was laid. The Japanese manga also began to surface on our shores, with Kazuo Koike and Goseki Gojimba's Lone Wolf and Cub embodying the best of the form, inspiring its own movie series and TV show, two of which, Lightning Swords of Death and the ultra-violent Shōgun Assassin, can be seen in America. Interesting. This is from March 1991. On our own shores, the TV series Kung Fu sparked Doug Moench and Paul Gulassi's Master of Kung Fu comic book. Countless samurai, kung fu, chops, sake, and ninja strips and flicks later, a certain comic book writer/artist by the name of Frank Miller became so enamored with the genres that he began to weave their elements into his work on Daredevil. Miller's first self-created comic epic, Ronin, went even further in meshing the samurai and martial arts iconography and philosophy with his own fantasies. The famed first issue of the Turtles was, in many ways, a parody of Miller's Daredevil, particularly their origin, with the fabled radioactive canister that blinded Matt Murdock echoed by the same or similar canister that mutated the Turtles. I didn't know that. And Ronin, with Pete and Kevin's cover to TMNT #1, a pointed satire of Miller's cover. Though they are hybrids of the samurai and martial art genres, a la Miller's comic book variations, a la funny animal traditions, a la 1950s mutant monster movies, a la whatever else, blended and transformed in the minds of talents of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the Turtles have carved out their own unique, utterly unique niche in the American psyche. Now, Michael Zulli has taken the Turtles and transposed them back into the milieu they really grew from. Milieu. Oh, that's a strange word. Here is an unknown feudal empire with Splinter and the Turtles as a renegade band of mutant warriors and Shredder as the region's no-masked lord to be feared and revered. Forget the VW wagon, partying, and cowabunga dudes. Think of Toshido Mifune, Zatiochi the Blind Swordsman, or the Lone Wolf and Cub, or the Lone Wolf and Cub rolling their murderous baby cart en route to the bloodied river Styx, centuries ago and world away. The Turtles will be returning to their more comfortable continuity soon enough. For now, sit quietly on your floor, perhaps with a cup of tea in hand. Breathe in, breathe out, and enter the dynasty of the turtle as it might have been. Stephen R. Bissett, Mountains of Madness, Vermont. How cool is that? Oh. I will say, it kind of threw me off, that part of, like, just reading all of that and just seeing, like, the cover art and that description of centuries ago in a world away, enter the dynasty of the turtle as it might have been. I was initially under the impression that this was taking place in like the Edo period or something like that, but it doesn't. Like you see here, like there's modern architecture, but I don't know, it's strange. I hate to say it, but it kind of reminds me of Joseph Michael Linsner's comics. Like, there's this medievalness going on, like this medieval flavor, but it's also set in present day. And that kind of reminded me of that. May have been also, I was revisiting Angry Christ comics. Man. And we'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, these are just, let me show you. Look at this. Look at this splash page. Can you imagine seeing the original of this? Look at that detail. It's just so beautiful. I would love to see the original pieces. But yeah, I thought that these were taking place in the past. And with that thought frame and just having that on my mind, it reminded me of another story. Oh, this guy, yes, also ninjas galore and set in the ancient past, like I thought that was, but it turns out it's not. But it still has that same feel. And I thought, how fun would it be if this was the first video? Because I've been wanting to do one where it's comics and books combined, because I don't separate the two in my head. I appreciate one just as much as the other, and I get just as much from one as the other. I consider comics like that's high literature. There are garbage comics, but there are also garbage books. It's all literature, it's all art, and there's not a difference between one or the other. And man, so I'm like going through those, revisiting this, and I thought it would be neat if I read one of my favorite, my favorite parts. This whole book is my favorite part. I mean, every single part in this book is my favorite part. It is so good. But this part, it's especially beautiful. And it doesn't really spoil anything either. It's about a tea ceremony between a husband and wife that have such a bitter history. I think there's a kitty trying to come.
Want to come in? Is there somebody that wants to come in? Yes. Hi, Bubby. Oh, is everything all right? I was getting worried. Hello.
And their conflict with each other is just, their drama's spreading to things that it just doesn't need to be spread to. And Lord Toranaga is like, y'all need to stop because you're screwing things up. And he has them do this like tea ceremony of forgiveness. And it's just, in the peace and quiet of the little house, Buntaro fastidiously opened the small earthenware tea caddy of the Tang dynasty and, with equal care, took up the bamboo spoon, beginning the final part of the ceremony. Deftly, he spooned up exactly the right amount of green powder and put it into the handleless porcelain cup. An ancient cast-iron kettle was singing over the charcoal. With the same tranquil grace, Buntaro poured the bubbling water into the cup, replaced the kettle on its tripod, then gently beat the powder and water with the bamboo whisk to blend it perfectly. He added a spoonful of cool water, bowed to Mariko, who knelt opposite him, and offered the cup. She bowed and took it with equal refinement, admiring the green liquid, and sipped 3 times, rested, then sipped again, finishing it. She offered the cup back. He repeated the symmetry of the formal cha making and again offered it. She begged him to taste the cha himself, as was expected of her. He sipped, and then again, and finished it. Then he made a 3rd cup and a 4th. More was politely refused. With great care, ritually, he washed and dried the cup, using the peerless cotton cloth, and laid both in their places. He bowed to her, and she to him. The chanoyu was finished. Buntaro was content that he had done his best, and that now, at least for the moment, there was peace between them. This afternoon, there had been none. He had met her palanquin. At once, as always, he had felt coarse and uncouth in contrast to her fragile perfection, like one of the wild, despised, barbaric, hairy Ainu tribesmen that once inhabited the land, but were now driven to the far north, across the straits, to the unexplored island of Hokkaido. All of his well-thought-out words had left him, and he clumsily invited her to the chanoyu, adding, "It's years since I've never given one for you tonight. I've never given one for you, but tonight will be convenient." Then he blurted out, never meaning to say it, knowing that it was stupid, inelegant, and a vast mistake. "Lord Toranaga said it was time for us to talk." "But you do not, sire." In spite of his resolve, he flushed and his voice rasped. "I'd like harmony between us, yes, and more. I've never changed, nah." "Of course, sire, and why should you? If there's any fault, it's not your place to change, but mine. If any fault exists, it's because of me. Please excuse me." "I'll excuse you," he said, towering over her there beside the palanquin, deeply conscious that others were watching, the Anjin-san and Omi among them. She was so lovely and tiny and unique, her hair piled high, her lowered eyes seemingly so demure, yet for him, filled now with that same black ice that always sent him in a blind, impotent frenzy, making him want to kill and shout and mutilate and smash and behave the way a samurai never should behave. "I've reserved the cha house for tonight," he told her, "for tonight after the evening meal. We're ordered to eat the evening meal with Lord Toranaga. I would be honored if you would be my guest afterwards." "It's I who am honored." She bowed and waited with the same lowered eyes, and he wanted to smash her to death into the ground, then go off and plunge his knife crisscross into his belly and let the eternal pain cleanse the torment from his soul. He saw her look up at him discerningly. "Was there anything else, sire?" she asked so softly. The sweat was running down his back and thighs, staining his kimono, his chest hurting like his head. "You're staying at the inn tonight." Then he had left her and made careful dispositions for the whole baggage train. As soon as he could, he had handed his duties over to Naga and strode off with a pretended truculence down the river bank, and when he was alone, he had plunged naked into the torrent, careless of his safety, and fought the river until his head had cleared and the pounding ache had gone. He had lain on the bank collecting himself. Now that she had accepted, he had to begin. There was little time. He summoned his strength and walked back to the rough garden gate that was within the mother gate and stood there for a moment rethinking his plan. Tonight he wanted everything to be perfect. Obviously the hut was imperfect, like its garden, an uncouth provincial attempt at a real chaw house. Never mind, he thought, now completely absorbed in his task, it will have to do. Night will hide many faults, and lights will have to create the form it lacks. Servants had already brought the things he had ordered earlier: tatamis, pottery oil lamps, and cleaning utensils. The very best in Yokose, everything brand new, but modest, discreet, and unpretentious. He stripped off his kimono, laid down his swords, and began to clean. First, the tiny reception room and kitchen and veranda, then the winding path and the flagstones that were let into the moss, and finally the rocks and skirting garden. He scrubbed and broomed and brushed until everything was spotless, letting himself swoop into the humility of manual labor that was the beginning of the Chanoyu, where the host alone was required to make everything faultless. The first perfection was absolute cleanliness. By dusk he had finished most of the preparations. Then he had bathed meticulously, endured the evening meal and the singing. As soon as he could, he had changed again into more somber clothes and hurried back to the garden. He latched the gate. First he put the taper to the oil lamps. Then, carefully, he sprinkled water on the flagstones and the trees that were now splashed here and there with flickering light, until the tiny garden was a fairyland of dewdrops dancing in the warmth of the summer's breeze. He repositioned some of the lanterns. Finally satisfied, he unlatched the gate and went to the vestibule. The carefully selected pieces of charcoal that had been placed punctiliously in a pyramid on white sand were burning correctly. The flowers seemed correct in the takonama. Once more he cleaned the already impeccable utensils. The kettle began to sing, and he was pleased with the sound that was enriched by the little pieces of iron he had placed so diligently in the bottom. All was ready. The first perfection of the Chanoyu was cleanliness. The second, complete simplicity. The last and greatest, suitability to the particular guest or guests. He heard her footsteps on the flagstones, the sound of her dipping her hands ritually in the cistern of fresh river water and drying them. 3 soft steps up to the veranda, 2 more to the curtained doorway. Even she had to bend to come through the tiny door that was made deliberately small to humble everyone. At a Chanoyo, all were equal, host and guest, the most high daimyo, the merest samurai, even a peasant if he was invited. First she studied her husband's flower arrangement. He had chosen the blossom of a single white wild rose and put a single pearl of water on the green leaf and set it on red stones. Autumn is coming, he was suggesting with the flower, talking through the flower. Do not weep for the time of fall, the time of dying, when the earth begins to sleep. Enjoy the time of beginning again and experience the glorious cool of the autumn air on this summer evening. Soon the tear will vanish and the rose, only the stones will remain. Soon you and I will vanish and only the stones will remain. He watched her apart from himself, now deep in the near trance that a Cha master sometimes was fortunate enough to experience, completely in harmony with his surroundings. She bowed to the flower in homage and came and knelt opposite him. Her kimono was dark brown, a thread of burnt gold at the seams enhancing the white column of her throat and face. Her obi the darkest of greens that matched the underkimono. Her hair simple and upswept and unadorned. You are welcome, he said with a bow, beginning the ritual. It is my honor, she replied, accepting her role. He served the tiny repast on a blemishless lacquered tray, the chopsticks placed just so. The slivers of fish on rice that he had prepared, a part of the pattern, and to complete the effect, a few wild flowers that he had found near the river bank scattered in perfect disarray. When she had finished eating, and he in his turn had finished eating, he lifted the tray, every movement formalized, to be observed and judged and recorded, and took it through the low doorway into the kitchen. Then, alone at rest, Mariko watched the fire critically, the coals a glowing mountain on a sea of stark white sand below the tripod, her ears listening to the hissing sound of the fire melding with the sighing of the barely simmering kettle above, and from the unseen kitchen, the sibilance of cloth on porcelain and water cleaning the already clean. In time her eyes wandered to the raw, twisted rafters and to the bamboos and the reeds that formed the thatch. The shadows cast by the few lamps he had placed seemingly at random made the small large and the insignificant rare, and the whole a perfect harmony. After she had seen everything and measured her soul against it, she went again into the garden, to the shallow basin that over eons nature had formed in the rock. Once more she purified her hands and mouth with the cool fresh water, drying them on a new towel. When she had settled back into her place, he said, "Perhaps now you would take cha. It would be my honor, but please do not put yourself to so much trouble on my account. It is my honor. You are my guest." So he had served her, and now there was the ending. In the silence, Mariko did not move for a moment, but stayed in her tranquility, not wishing yet to acknowledge the ending or disturb the peace surrounding her. But she felt the growing strength of his eyes. The chanoyo was ended. Now life must begin again. "You did it perfectly," she whispered, her sadness overwhelming her. A tear slid from her eyes, and the falling ripped the heart from his chest. No, please excuse me. You are perfect. It was ordinary," he said, startled by such unexpected praise. "It was the best I've ever seen," she said, moved by the stark honesty in his voice. No, please excuse me. If it was fair, it was because of you, Mariko-san. It was only fair. You made it better. For me, it was flawless. Everything. How sad that others, more worthy than I, couldn't have witnessed it also." Her eyes glistened in the flickering light. "You witnessed it. That is everything. It was only for you. Others wouldn't have understood." She felt the hot tears now on her cheeks. Normally she would have been ashamed of them, but now they did not trouble her. "Thank you. How can I thank you?" He picked up a sprig of wild thyme, and his fingers trembling, leaned over and gently caught one of her tears. Silently he looked down at the tear and the branchlet dwarfed by his huge fist. "My work, any work, is inadequate against the beauty of this. Thank you." He watched the tear on the leaf. A piece of charcoal fell down the mountain, and without thinking he picked up the tongs and replaced it. A few sparks danced into the air from the mountaintop, and it became an erupting volcano. Both drifted into a sweet melancholia, joined by the simplicity of the single tear, content together in the quiet, joined in humility, knowing that what had been given had been returned in purity. Later he said, "If our duty did not forbid it, I would ask you to join me in death, now." "I would go with you." "Gladly," she answered at once. "Let us go to death, now." "We can't. Our duty is to Lord Toranaga." She took out the stiletto that was in her obi and reverently placed it on the tatami. "Then please allow me to prepare the way." "No, that would be failing in our duty. What is to be will be. You and I cannot turn the scale. Yes, but we may not go before our master, neither you nor I. He needs every trustworthy vassal for a little longer. Please excuse me, I must forbid it." "I would be pleased to go tonight. I'm prepared. More than that, I totally desire to go beyond. Yes, my soul is brimming with joy. A hesitant smile. Please excuse me for being selfish. You're perfectly right about our duty. The razor's sharp blade glistened in the candlelight. They watched it, lost in contemplation. Then he broke the spell. Why Osaka, Mariko-san? There are things to be done there which only I can do. His frown deepened as he watched the light from a guttering wick catch the tear and become refracted into a billion colors. What things? Things that concern the future of our house, which must be done by me. In that case, you must go. He looked at her searchingly. But you alone? Yes. I wish to make sure all family arrangements are perfect between us and Lord Kiyama for Tsurugi's marriage. Money and dowry and lands and so on. There's his increased fief to formalize. Lord Hiromatsu and Lord Toranaga require it done. I am responsible for the house. Yes, he said slowly, that's your duty. His eyes held hers. If Lord Toranaga says you can go, then go, but it's not likely you'll be permitted there. Even so, you must return quickly, very quickly. It would be unwise to stay in Osaka a moment longer than necessary. Yes, by sea would be quicker than by road. But you've always hated the sea. I still hate the sea. Do you have to be there quickly? I don't think half a month or a month would matter. Perhaps. I don't know. I just feel I should go at once. Then we will leave the time and the matter of the going to Lord Toranaga, if he permits you to go at all. With Lord Sataki here and the 2 scrolls, that can only mean war. It will be too dangerous to go. Yes, thank you. Glad that was now finished, he looked around the little room contentedly, unconcerned now that his ugly bulk dominated the space, each of his thighs broader than her waist, his arms thicker than her neck. This has been a fine room, better than I dared to hope. I've enjoyed being here. I'm reminded again that a body is nothing but a hut in the wilderness. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad you came to Yokose, Mariko-san. If it hadn't been for you, I'd never have given a chanoyo here and never felt so one with eternity. She hesitated, then shyly picked up the Tang Cha caddy. It was a simple, covered jar without adornment. The orange-brown glaze that run just short, leaving an uneven rim of bare porcelain on the bottom, dramatizing the spontaneity of the potter and his unwillingness to disguise the simplicity of his materials. Buntaro had bought it from Sen Nakata, the most famous cha master who had ever lived, for 20,000 koku. It's so beautiful, she murmured, enjoying the touch of it. So perfect for the ceremony. Yes. You were truly a master tonight, Buntaro-san. You gave me so much happiness. Her voice was low and intent, and she leaned forward a little. Everything was perfect for me. The garden, and how you used artistry to overcome the flaws with light and shadow. And this, again she touched the cha caddy. Everything perfect, even the character you'd written on the towel, affection. For me, tonight, affection was the perfect word. Again, tears spilled down her cheeks. Please excuse me, she said, brushing them away. He bowed, embarrassed by such praise. To hide it, he began to wrap the caddy in its silken sheaths. When he had finished, he set it into its box and placed it carefully in front of her. Mariko-san, if our house has money troubles, take this. Sell it. Never! It was the only possession, apart from his swords and longbow, that he prized in life. That would be the last thing I would ever sell. Please excuse me, but if pay for my vassals is a problem, take it. There's enough for all of them with care, and the best weapons and the best horses. In that our house is strong. No, Buntaro-san, the Tang is yours. We've not much time left to us. Who should I will it to? Tsurugi? She looked at the coals and the fire consuming the volcano, humbling it. No, not until he's a worthy cha master, equaling his father. I counsel you to leave the Tang to Lord Toranaga, who's worthy of it, and ask him, before he dies, to judge if our son will ever merit receiving it. And if Lord Toranaga loses and dies before winter, as I'm certain he'll lose, what? Here in this privacy, I can tell you quietly that truth without pretense. Isn't an important part of the Chanoyu to be without pretense? Yes, he will lose, unless he gets Kiyamo and Inoshi and Zataki. In that case, set down in your will that the tank should be sent with a courtier to His Imperial Highness. Petition him to accept it. Certainly the tang merits divinity. Yes, that would be the perfect choice. He studied the knife, then added gloomily, Mariko-san, there's nothing to be done for Lord Toranaga. His karma's written. He wins or he loses, and if he wins or loses, there'll be a great killing. Yes. Brooding, he took his eyes off her knife and contemplated the wild thyme sprig, the tear still pure. Later he said, if he loses before I die, or if I'm dead, I, or one of my men, will kill the Anjin-san. Her face was ethereal against the darkness. The soft breeze moved threads of her hair, making her seem even more statue-like. Please excuse me, may I ask why? He's too dangerous to leave alive. His knowledge, his ideas that I've heard, even fifth hand. He'll infect the realm, even Lord Yamen. Lord Toranaga is already under his spell. Lord Toranaga enjoys his knowledge. The moment Lord Toranaga dies, that also is the Anjin-san's death order. But I hope our Lord's eyes are open before that time. The guttering lamp spluttered and went out. He glanced up at her. Are you under his spell? He's a fascinating man, and his mind's so different from ours. His values, yes, so different in so many ways that it's almost impossible to understand him at times. Once I tried to explain a Chanoyu to him, but it was beyond him. It must be terrible to be born barbarian. Terrible, Buntaro said. Yes. His eyes dropped to the blade of her stiletto. Some people think the Anjin-san was Japanese in a previous life. He's not like other barbarians, and he tries hard to speak and act like one of us, though he fails. I wish you'd seen him almost commit seppuku, Buntaro-san. It was extraordinary. I saw death visit him to be turned away by Omi's hand. If he was Japanese previously, I think that would explain many things. Lord Toranaga thinks he's very valuable to us now. It's time you stopped training him and became Japanese again. Sire? I think Lord Toranaga's under his spell. And you. Please excuse me, but I don't think I am. That other night in Anjiro, the one that went bad, on that night I felt you were with him against me. Of course it was an evil thought, but I felt it. Her gaze left the blade. She looked at him steadily and did not reply. Another lamp spluttered briefly and went out. Now only one light remained in the room. Yes, I hated him that night, Buntaro continued in the same calm voice, and wanted him dead, and you, and Fujiko-san. My bow whispered to me like it does sometimes, asking for a killing. And when the next dawn I saw him coming down the hill with those cowardly little pistols in his hands, my arrows begged to drink his blood. But I put his killing off and humbled myself, hating my bad manners more than him, shamed by my bad manners and the sake. His tiredness showed now. So many shames to bear, you and I. Yes, you don't want me to kill him. You must do what you know to be your duty, she said, as I will always do mine. What's gonna happen? Oh, so much happens. So much happens. I'm very proud of myself. I didn't cry. I usually can't read that part without crying my face off. Well, yep, I'm gonna need to bring this to an end because people are gonna start coming through that door soon. So, thanks for hanging out. And yeah, I better go. All right, bye.